In a televised public address earlier on this Thursday morning, President Yoon Suk-yeol defended his declaration of martial law, claiming it was an act of governance and pledging to fight allegations of rebellion. Now, in response, both the ruling and opposition parties denounced his remarks in a rash of unity, raising prospects of a parliamentary vote in favor of impeachment this coming Saturday. We cover this latest event and more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective for this Thursday, December 12th, here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. There have been a number of fresh developments in the ongoing political predicament here, and for more on the latest events, I have Kelly Kasulis Cho with the Washington Post here in the studio. Kelly, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Andres Sanchez Braun with EFE Spain joining us virtually. Andres, it's good to have you on.
Hi, Sunny. Always a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Right. Kelly, we'll start here in the studio. Let's begin with the President's latest remarks regarding his martial law declaration. What exactly was his message?
Well, his message was pretty much summed up in one line that he gave today when he was speaking. He said he was going to fight until the end. He does not plan to resign, it sounds like, and we're looking at an impeachment vote again, probably on Saturday. Right now is a really interesting situation because it's not clear if we have a power vacuum going on. It's not really clear, even after his speech, who's calling the shots. The government so far has appeared a little frozen. There's been several meetings canceled, revision of bills. I think the ambassador to China is stuck where he is right now because he can't be recalled formally. There's just a lot going on that makes it seem like the government is in a state of inefficiency. And it's not really clear who's calling the shots in the Blue House, if anyone at all, although according to President Yoon, it's going to be him until he's forced out of office.
Right, and against this backdrop, Andres, the opposition Democratic Party is poised to put a second impeachment motion to a vote at the Parliament this coming Saturday. That would be December 14th. What do you believe are the prospects of this vote being passed, especially keeping in mind President Yoon Suk-yeol's latest remarks to the public?
Yes, exactly. The opposition, the main opposition party, filed the motion to get President Yoon impeached yesterday. Registered it today. It's due to be voted on Saturday. Now, before President Yoon's speech today, there was uncertainty regarding how many ruling party lawmakers would actually support the motion, because last Saturday, the ruling party actually boycotted it because the party had called for so-called orderly exit for Mr. Yoon, this meaning most probably that he would be stepping by himself sometime around spring. But then again, that was until today, when President Yoon spoke, and as Kelly has mentioned, he gave a rather defiant take on why he legitimately believes that he did something right by decreeing the martial law. And then minutes before that, and this is probably because the leader of the ruling party, Mr. Han Dong-hoon, had talked to Mr. Yoon, he actually said publicly that that he's supporting the motion to get President Yoon impeached. Now, Mr. Han is not a lawmaker. He doesn't hold a seat in the National Assembly, but the opposition only needs 8 votes from the opposition for this motion to pass. And we already know that 7 lawmakers from the ruling party, from the PPP, have spoken out and said that they will vote for President Yoon's impeachment. So it looks very likely that the president will be actually impeached on Saturday, and that will leave it to the Constitutional Court to decide finally if he did violate the Constitution when he decreed the martial law or not.
Right. Kelly, earlier you spoke about the apparent leadership vacuum here in the country. Keeping that in mind, what do you suppose would be the broader implications of a prolonged political paralysis for Korea and its foreign policy, of course?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of concern about this right now. With the Washington Post, I did a number of interviews this week, including with the former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs under the Moon administration. And he described, during the early days of Moon's presidency, under similar circumstances, there was an impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye. That foreign policy was basically in a state of paralysis for at least 2 or more months because so much needed to be wrangled together at that time. So if you listen to that, I mean, that already, given the instability of the government, suggests that foreign policy will be frozen when, if and when a new administration starts. But then, if we look at the United States, we're about to inaugurate President Trump for his next term. And he is a very different leader than Biden and brings a lot of unpredictability to this equation in terms of the U.S.-Korea alliance, in terms of military support on the peninsula, in terms of trade and the economy. And so, South Korea is in a place of jeopardy in that it might be on weak footing. South Korea is probably not on the top of President-elect Trump's agenda, but if he were to suddenly create a provocation with North Korea or engage with North Korea or want to put his foot forward on some of these universal tariffs, or, again, call into question whether or not South Korea should pay high sums for U.S. troops on the peninsula. I mean, Korea's not really in the best position to react because, as I mentioned earlier, it's not even really clear who's in charge right now. There's been a lot of mixed messaging. Shortly before President Yoon came out and said he was going to fight until the end, the leader of the PPP, the People Power Party, has suggested that he was going to step down. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity. And just in the short term, if you're looking at that from the White House's perspective, I'm pretty sure that some Biden administration officials probably don't really want to engage with anyone in the Blue House because they don't know if that person is going to end up being scandal-ridden, indicted, accused of something. But also it's not clear if those efforts are going to be best used right now when the president's trying to close up his legacy and pass on the Oval Office and he doesn't know if anything can get done here. So in terms of U.S.-Korea relations, I think there's a real issue. There's also some potential backsliding in progress with Japan. I mean, the United States for a long time has been kind of trying to push South Korea to re-engage with Japan. They've been kind of estranged for a few years now, and there's been some success with trilateral talks. And now, if Yoon is not part of that picture, and especially if we in South Korea elect a Democratic Party candidate, if Yoon is impeached, there's some potential there that that progress has been lost or that it at least can't move forward in the coming months. And that relationship has been really critical to the Americans because they want to use it as leverage against China. So there's actually a lot that could potentially be at stake here, not only because of the immediate frozen status of the government, but also there's going to be a lot of time wasted in a transition in the White House and here, if there is a transition.
Right, and staying with concerns here, Andres, there is also quite a bit of anxiety about the possibility, about the potential of provocations by North Korea, perhaps seeking to take advantage of the political turmoil here in the country. Andres, how valid are these concerns, do you think?
Well, I'm thinking they are pretty natural concerns. Kelly just mentioned that we don't really know right now who's in charge here. We've heard the ruling party say one thing on the weekend, saying that Prime Minister Han Duck-soo was supposed to take over all of Mr. Yoon's duties. And then what we heard today in the president's speech was that he has no intention, apparent intention of stepping down. He said that he'll face any investigations pending on him and the impeachment vote. Mr. Yoon is technically still the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Republic of Korea. So that concern, of course, is justified. And also we have to think that I believe it's 6 top commanders in the army right now have been removed from their posts since December 3, since the martial law was decreed and then revoked hours later. This includes ex-defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, the military counterintelligence commander Yo In-kyung. I can think of the Capital Defense Command, the Special Warfare Command. These are all basic, important units of the army. And of course, there's right now lots of questions surrounding preparation in case North Korea decides to conduct some sort of so-called provocations, obviously.
Right, and perhaps because of those concerns, Kelly, we've been told that the command of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Paparo, has boosted monitoring of North Korea amid the internal instability here in South Korea. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think that was sort of a standard statement to maybe ease some concerns that are going on. As an American journalist speaking to mostly an American audience, I think there's a lot of confusion about how North Korea fits into these recent events and also how dangerous things may or may not have been during those 6 hours where martial law was declared. And so I just want to clear that up. I think, you know, when you're dealing with a country like Korea that is kind of on paper perpetually at war, anytime there's any kind of political instability or a perceived weakness in that country, of course, there's always the fear that its adversary, in this case North Korea, could see that as an opportunity to drive up tensions, to launch some kind of attack, or to kind of affect some kind of change in the dynamic with Korea and globally. From the analysts I spoke to this week, North Korea doesn't seem to have provided much indication that they're interested in doing that right now, although we have potentially months of political instability and uncertainty to come, and Trump is kind of a wild card on how quickly or if at all he'll engage North Korea. So I do think, you know, there's some reason for concern in terms of, you know, geopolitical calculations. And I think a statement like that is pretty standard in just saying that, you know, North Korea is being watched. If there's a provocation, South Korea and the United States would be prepared for it. But there's really no indication that there is any threat to bodily harm at this time. Maybe there will be some political calculations from Pyongyang or Washington in the coming months, but that remains to be seen.
Right then. So beyond concerns on the security, over the security front, Andres, I believe we have some with regard to the economy here. I'd like to highlight, Andres, an observation by Forbes regarding the latest events here in the country. Now, it reads, the high price for Yoon's selfish martial law debacle will be paid over time in installments by South Korea's 51 million people. That being said, Andres, what look to be the economic repercussions of a prolonged power turmoil here in South Korea?
Well, of course, since the martial law episode took place last week, there's been renewed talk about the so-called Korea discount, which is a concept surrounding the fact that Korea's political instability makes it a less attractive destination for investors, of course. And unfortunately, the martial law being decreed by President Yoon seems to prove that there is still a Korea discount. Korea discount also, of course, applies to the fact that South Korea is neighboring a country ruled by a military dictatorship, and that it technically is at a state of war. But of course, this unexpected episode that took place last week has increased the number of uncertainties surrounding and the challenges surrounding the Korean economy right now. If you think about it, 2025 for Korea wasn't looking all that good. It was kind of an uphill scenario with the economy slowing, and already many people pointing out that President Yoon doing half of his mandate hasn't really been able to tackle any of the major issues that the economy is facing, like record low fertility rates, household debt, gender pay gap, which is the largest among developing countries, or the fact that he hasn't tackled pretty much like any of his predecessors, the excessive power that Chaebols hold in the economy, right? And as Kelly once again just put it, Trump is going to become the president of the United States in around a month, and he is indeed a wild card, not only in terms of security issues, but also on the economic front. He's been talking about all sorts of tariffs up and down. He's also pointed out to the possibility of asking for more money from Korea to cover the costs of 28,500 troops, American troops being deployed on Korean soil. And of course, you don't want a so-called dead man walking government to have to face this scenario, right? Now, of course, the fact that President Yoon might get impeached on Saturday certainly seems to clear the way a little bit more and improve that perspective of maybe a new government taking power in Korea soon. But we'll have to see also, because impeachments, as we know, the Constitutional Court has up to 180 days to deem if Mr. Yoon has to be impeached. So we still have, there's a lot of developments that we have to wait and assess yet.
Right, especially since the president himself has claimed he will challenge any decision with regard to impeachment or to find him guilty of rebellion. Speaking of Mr. Trump, Kelly, now, prior to his return to the White Office, there has been talk about the second Trump administration seeking perhaps direct dialogue with North Korea. The concern here within South Korea is that the country itself may be sidelined from these interactions between Washington and Pyongyang. And given the political vacuum here in the country, prospects are looking quite high so that these concerns may become a reality. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, I think that's a real concern. I mean, the United States is certainly a close partner with South Korea and will hopefully include them in those conversations. But, you know, when we last looked at this kind of unilateral decision to provoke and then engage with North Korea that we saw in the previous Trump administration, that felt very out of step. It felt a little unprecedented. It felt like a wild card move at the time, but it was met with the forces of President Moon Jae-in, who was very, very interested in engaging with the North and very involved and really asserted himself in that equation and carried that through, honestly, to the end of his term to his best ability. Now, we don't even know who's going to be in power in a few months in South Korea, and depending on who that is, engagement with the North is either going to be very appealing or very much not. You know, the conservatives in South Korea tend to not be pro-engagement. I mean, North Korea was even used sort of as a pretext of national security to impose this martial law. And there's some kind of Cold War era speech that's been thrown around, kind of branding people who are pro-engagement as pro-North and communist, which is kind of a legacy of the polarization of Korean politics anyway. But my point is simply that, you know, do I think that the United States would want to engage with North Korea without any consultations with the South? I think that would be a very bad look. But is Korea on stable footing to deal with an issue like that? Maybe not. And then we also have this unpredictable figure who kind of has this playbook of creating problems and then fixing them as a matter of, you know, having a victory for public perception. So I do think there's some legitimate concern here. Again, North Korea may not be at the top of President Trump's agenda, or it might be a good ploy to get some support immediately in office. I have no idea. And there are certainly other issues as well where Korea needs to have stable footing and may not. When we look at how Trump dealt with the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement, That was really early in his office. And in the end, I mean, basically the agreement that they renegotiated looked almost exactly the same as the original one. But that was really because of the tireless effort of South Korean negotiators who were prepared and unified on dealing with this. And it's not clear if that will happen if there's political instability at home. And it's not clear if that pressure from the South Korean populace is going to exist like it did before, if we're distracted with domestic politics as well.
Right, so much uncertainty as we speak. Andres, generally speaking, Korea's political turmoil has been making much global headlines. How do you explain the global media interest in Korea's domestic affairs?
Well, I guess the initial interest was basically the same that many of us had here. Why is this happening? Korea is right now a soft power reference worldwide. It's a country that people look up to in terms of culture, for example. Well, we can think of the second season of Squid Game being premiered this week, and it hasn't even been released on platforms yet on Netflix, and it already got an Emmy nomination. So I think that's a pretty good benchmark of the kind of global interest that Korea sparks right now. So everybody was kind of baffled to find out that there was suddenly martial law being implemented in the middle of the night. And there still remains a lot of answers that we are still waiting for. Why was what motivated all this scheme, and also I think what's drawn a lot of interest is the fact that there's been lots of changes of direction in the past week regarding the ruling party and the president himself. Last Sunday, after the motion for having him impeached was boycotted, he signaled that he was going to leave his destiny in the hands of the party. And then today he came out and said that, well, he didn't say that he had the intention of stepping down, clearly, and that he would face any challenge coming up his way. So I think people are still going to be paying lots of close attention to what happens in Korea in the next few days.
Right, especially on Saturday, December 14th, where we have a second vote on his impeachment motion. All right, Andres, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts, Andres. And Kelly here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends our Thursday edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow with more talk on the mounting political fallout from South Korea's short-lived martial law early last week. Thank you for now.